Most people wake up and instantly go into reaction. The alarm goes off, they snooze it 3 times. They roll out of bed reluctantly, grab their phone, check social media, emails, messages. And before they even brush their teeth, their focus is hijacked by everyone else's agenda. They're not in charge of their life, their phone is. Their inbox is. Their obligations are. And that right there is the biggest trapping. They've surrendered their personal power before the day has even begun. You want to change your life. You want to break through your limitations. You want to achieve something real, something that makes you feel alive. It doesn't start with luck. It doesn't start with talent. It starts with what you do between the moment you wake up and 10 a.m. That's the battlefield. That's the foundation of your life. If you can win your morning, you can win anything. Every champion you admire, every leader who moves nations, every entrepreneur who reshaped industries, every parent who juggles chaos with love and presence, they don't stumble into their morning. They own it. They protect it. They turn it into a launch pad, not a landing zone. Because they understand something the average person doesn't. The first few hours of the day are the most powerful leverage you have over your mindset, your energy, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the standard of your rituals, and your morning ritual is either empowering you or depleting you. There is no neutral. You're either setting yourself up to play offense in life, or you're setting yourself up to be knocked around by the world's demands. You've got to choose. When you wake up and consciously command your focus, your physiology, your thoughts, your energy, you are building a fortress around your inner world. You are taking the steering wheel of your life and saying, I decide how I feel. I decide what I focus on. I decide what I create today. And when you live like that, when you take back control in those first hours, you stop waiting for life to give you a break. You start creating the life you want on your terms. That doesn't mean you need some 47-step morning routine copied from a YouTube guru. It doesn't mean you need to get up at 4 a.m. or meditate on a Himalayan mountain. It means you need to be intentional. You need to decide, before the world gets to you, who you're going to be and how you're going to show up. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about momentum. And momentum is a product of direction. You don't get momentum by sitting on the fence. You get it by getting into motion every single morning with purpose. You can't afford to let your morning be random. Because randomness breeds regret. You need rituals that wire you for strength, clarity, and action. You need to prime your emotions. You need to feed your mind with something powerful. You need to move your body. You need to ask yourself, what do I want to create today? Who do I need to become to make that happen? That's how you own your morning. Not by reacting, by create. Most people spend their mornings consuming, scrolling, reacting, complaining, delaying. That's why they stay stuck. That's why their energy is drained before noon. That's why they feel like they're always behind. But you're not most people. Not if you're here, not if you're still reading this. You're hungry. You're ready. You're done tolerating average. And that means you need to flip the switch and make a new standard. Your new standard is this: before 1 a.m. I get into peak state. I lead myself. I prepare my mind, my body, and my soul to go to war for my dreams. I don't wait for permission. I don't need motivation. I create energy. I choose what I focus on. I decide the quality of my life by deciding the quality of my mornings. Because once you take ownership of your mornings, you stop blaming the world for where you are. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop needing a reason to take action. You just do it. You just show up. You just lead. That's what ownership does. It puts you in control. And when you're in control of your morning, the rest of the day becomes a reflection of that power. There's something psychological that happens when you win early. It's like your brain says, we're on fire today. Let's keep going. That's why momentum matters. That's why the first action you take in the morning can either lift you into purpose or pull you into procrastination. Your brain rewards progress. It rewards forward motion. But you've got to give it a reason. You've got to build that habit. Look, life isn't going to wait for you. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. If you want to be great, if you want to live fully, then every morning becomes a training ground for the life you're building. Every decision you make before 1 a.m. is either moving you toward your vision or further into your patterns. So ask yourself, what am I training for each morning? Am I training to lead or to follow? To create or to consume? To conquer or to coast? And the truth is, most of the world is asleep at the wheel. They're drifting. They're in survival mode. But not you. You weren't born to drift. You were born to drive, and it starts the second you wake up. Because when you own your morning, you don't just change your day, you start rewriting your entire life. You cannot expect to perform like a high achiever when your body is tired, your mind is scattered, and your spirit is sluggish. You can't think clearly, lead effectively, or feel fulfilled when your internal world is running on fumes. If you want to dominate your day, if you want to walk into challenges with confidence instead of hesitation, you've got to prime your mind and body like a professional. Because peak performance isn't accidental. It's conditioned. It's engineered. It's built with intention every single morning before you ever sit down at your desk or open your laptop. When you prime something, you're getting it ready to fire. You're loading energy into a system so it's ready to release with precision and force. And that's exactly what your morning routine should do for you. It should pump life into your nervous system, oxygen into your brain, and power into your identity. It should wake up the part of you that's decisive, driven, passionate, and clear. You've got to snap yourself out of the fog and into focus. And that doesn't happen by accident. It's done through a ritual, through a sequence, through a set of non-negotiables that put you at peak emotional and physical state. You start with your body, because your physiology is the fastest way to change your psychology. Motion changes emotion. Your body is not some passive tool you drag through the day. It's a performance machine, a vessel of power, and when you activate it first thing in the morning, you unlock access to a level of energy that most people never touch. Most people roll out of bed and carry their stress from the pillow to the shower. Their body is tight, their breath is shallow, their posture is weak. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, unfocused, and tired. That's not fate. That's a lack of priming. Jump. Breathe. Do whatever you've got to do to flood your body with oxygen. Wake up your lymphatic system. Open up your posture. Command your breath. You're not waiting to feel good. You're deciding to feel good. You're telling your body, it's game time. That physical shift starts rewiring your brain chemistry. Your cortisol drops. Your dopamine rises. You shift from stress to strength, from reactivity to readiness, from fatigue to fire. But the body is only half of the equation. The other half is the mind. And most people walk into their day with mental clutter, unconscious worry, and invisible pressure weighing them down. They're carrying yesterday's baggage into today's opportunity. If you don't take control of your mind will control you. And it's trained to focus on survival, on fear, on what could go wrong. So if you don't program it consciously every morning, you'll unconsciously drift into patterns that sabotage your growth. That's why priming your mind isn't optional. It's a requirement. And it starts with gratitude, because gratitude is the antidote to fear. It's impossible to feel fear and gratitude at the same time. You can't be anxious when you're truly present in what you're thankful for. So take time each morning to feel it in your body, not just list it in your head. Breathe it in. Let it fill you. Gratitude grounds you in truth. It reminds you that no matter what's coming today, you're already blessed, already strong, already capable. Next, you visualize. You don't leave your goals as abstract wishes. You see them. You feel them. You walk through them mentally as if they're already happening. You prime your brain to focus on the outcomes you want, not the problems you fear. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So when you rehearse success in your mind, you build confidence in your body. You condition belief. You install certainty. Then you align your mind with your mission. Remind yourself why you're doing this. Not the surface level tasks, but the real purpose. Who are you doing this for? What future are you building? What pain are you ending? What legacy are you creating? You speak that purpose out loud. You affirm it. You declare it. Because your voice programs your nervous system. Words become identity, and identity drives behavior. You're not just priming your mind to feel good. You're priming it to act with power. That means feeding it with something that challenges you. Reading something that grows you. Listening to something that pushes you to think bigger. You can't walk into your day with an empty tank. Your mental nutrition has to match your ambition. If you want to lead, if you want to create, if you want to dominate in your field, then you've got to start your day by putting better thoughts in your head than the noise the world throws at you. And here's the true thing: if you don't prime yourself, the world will do it for you. The news will prime you with fear. Social media will prime you with comparison. Emails will prime you with stress. Other people's problems will prime you with distraction. That's the default mode. And if you're not interrupting that pattern every morning with intention, you're not in control, you're in reaction. And nobody builds an extraordinary life from a reactive place. This is about stepping into the driver's seat of your experience. This is about lighting the fire before anyone else even strikes a match. This is about becoming the person who doesn't wait for energy, for clarity, for courage, but generates it, creates it, embodies it from the moment they wake up. Because how you start is how you continue. How you feel is how you act, and how you act is how you create everything. Fear is not something to be managed. It's not something to tiptoe around, to delay, to rationalize away. Fear is a signal. It's energy. And that energy, if not confronted directly, will own you. It will shrink your decisions, sabotage your momentum, and convince you to trade your power for comfort. If you want to live an extraordinary life, if you want to create something real and bold and fulfilling, then you have to make it your ritual, your instinct, your automatic response to attack your fear first thing in the morning. Before doubt grows teeth, before hesitation builds a home, before comfort becomes a trap. When most people wake up, they reach for what's easy. They reach for what's familiar. They grab their phone, check the weather, scroll through the same content they scrolled through yesterday. They ease into the day, waiting for motivation to somehow rise inside them like the sun. But motivation doesn't lead action. Action leads motivation. And the reason they never build momentum is because the one thing they actually need to do, the thing that would shift their entire trajectory, they avoid it. They postpone it. They fear it. And so it controls them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. There's something right now that you've been resisting. It's been following you from day to day, growing heavier in your mind, growing sharper in your nervous system. It might be a conversation you've been putting off, a project you haven't started, a decision you haven't made, a truth you haven't faced. You know it matters. You know it's necessary, but you haven't leaned into it because it scares you. And the longer you wait, the more control it has. That fear is your compass. It points to the door you must walk through. And if you train yourself to walk through it first thing in the morning, before the excuses kick in, before the world distracts you, you'll separate yourself from the masses. Because 99% of people spend their whole lives dancing around the thing they're afraid of. But growth doesn't live on the edges of comfort. It lives dead center in the middle of fear. That's where your next level is waiting. You don't need more time. You don't need more information. You need courage. And courage isn't a trait. It's a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. Every morning when you wake up and choose to confront the hardest, most uncomfortable, most intimidating task on your list, that's reps. That's training. That's you proving to yourself that you can act in spite of fear, not in the absence of it. And that's the key. You don't wait to not feel afraid. You move anyway. You move through it. You don't run from fear. You run at it. Because fear is a liar until you challenge it. Then it shrinks. Then it dissolves. Then it becomes fuel. You want to feel powerful. You want to be unstoppable. You've got to stop running from discomfort and start hunting it. That means the moment you wake up, you ask yourself, what am I avoiding? And then you go do it. You don't rationalize. You don't delay. You don't negotiate with your mind. You go. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you teach your nervous system that fear is not a wall. It's a doorway. That's how you rewire your identity from someone who hesitates into someone who leads. Because fear is not just about the task. It's about identity. Every time you give into fear, you reinforce a belief about who you are. You say to yourself, I can't handle that. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. You don't say it out loud, but your actions scream it. And your nervous system listens. But when you flip that pattern and take action in the face of fear, you send a new message. I move forward. I do hard things. I lead myself. That's how confidence is built. Not from achievements, but from evidence. From proving to yourself day after day that you will not be owned by fear. The first fear you face in the morning sets the tone for how you handle the rest of the day. If you tackle the hardest thing first, everything else feels lighter. You build momentum, you expand, you walk taller, you speak bolder, because now you're in state. Now you're in charge. But if you run from that first fear, if you push it to the afternoon or the next day, or sometime soon, you walk into the rest of the day carrying weight you were meant to drop. You carry hesitation into your meetings. You carry tension into your relationships. You carry doubt into your goals. There's power in the first move. When your brain sees you do something difficult first thing in the morning, it recalibrates. It says, we're not here to coast. We're here to conquer. And from that point on, you operate differently. You walk differently. You expect more of yourself. Because now you're playing from a higher standard, a higher identity. One built on truth, on courage, on clarity, not fear. And here's the secret most people never realizing: the fear you're facing isn't really about the task. It's about the story you've attached to it. You've given it power by avoiding it. You've inflated it in your mind. But when you move, when you act, you strip that story of its influence. You reclaim authority over your focus, your energy, your destiny. You turn fear into fire. You turn resistance into results. You stop being the victim of what you're avoiding and become the architect of what you're building. Your brain is not a storage unit. It's a command center. It doesn't just hold information. It determines the quality of your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately, your destiny. And just like your body can't run on junk food and expect to function at a high level, your mind can't run on mental garbage and expect clarity, confidence, or creativity. If you want to perform at your highest level, you need to feed your brain like your life depends on it. Because it does. You need to be ruthless about what goes into your mind each morning. Because your input shapes your outlook, and your outlook drives your output. What most people do in the morning is simple. They consume, but they consume the wrong things. They wake up and flood their brain with negativity. The news screams fear. Social media whispers comparison. Emails deliver pressure. Notifications steal attention. And by 8 a.m. they're already overwhelmed, scattered, and emotionally hijacked. That is not how you build a powerful life. That's how you build a reactive, survival-driven existence. You cannot rise in life while constantly flooding your brain with thoughts, images, and ideas that shrink your energy and dilute your focus. Every morning, you are at a crossroads. You can either feed your brain something that elevates you or something that erodes you. And the truth is, most people don't make that decision consciously. They just repeat whatever they did yesterday. They're on autopilot. They're stuck in routines that keep them mentally malnourished. But if you want to lead, if you want to grow, if you want to create something that lasts, you have to interrupt that pattern and upgrade the standard. That means you build a habit of feeding your brain the thoughts, messages, and beliefs that expand you instead of shrink you. The morning is a sacred time for programming your focus. Your mind is still transitioning from sleep. It's open, impressionable, and ready to lock on a direction. What you put into it during those first hours becomes the lens through which you see the rest of your day. That lens can be fear, scarcity, and noise, or it can be power, purpose, and possibility, and the difference is in what you choose to consume. You've got to treat your mind like the elite treat their bodies. They don't put garbage in and hope for excellence out. They're intentional, strategic, disciplined, and you need to be the same way with your thoughts. You don't just scroll through whatever shows up. You seek out content that challenges you to think deeper. You read words that remind you of who you are. You listen to voices that stir up something bigger inside of you. You don't feed your mind for entertainment, you feed it for expansion. Expansion means you stretch your thinking, you open your awareness. You invite new perspectives. That could be 5 pages of a powerful book. It could be a short podcast with someone who's walked the path you're trying to walk. It could be a handwritten journal entry where you ask yourself questions that pull you out of the shallow and into the truth. This isn't about checking a box. This is about tuning your internal radio to the frequency of your future. Because what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you act on. When you fill your brain with empowering ideas, bold visions, powerful stories, your entire nervous system responds. Your posture shifts, your voice changes, your energy rises. Because now you're not reacting to the world. You're creating your world from the inside out. You're not waiting for life to feel good. You're choosing to think thoughts that create momentum. This is where most people get it wrong. They think motivation is about hype. It's not. It's about alignment. It's about building a mental environment that supports the life you say you want. If your goals are big but your daily input is weak, you're going to feel a gap. That gap turns into frustration, procrastination, and burnout. Not because you're not capable, but because you're not feeding your brain the fuel it needs to sustain high performance. Think of your brain like a fire. If you want it to burn hot, to light up everything around you, to spread energy and clarity and drive, then you need to throw the right logs on it. You don't throw wet leaves and expect a blaze. Throw purpose. You throw truth. You throw discipline. You throw vision. You throw the thoughts and ideas that remind you that you are not here to coast, you're here to lead. And leading starts with leading yourself. That means you don't let the world dictate your state. You don't open your eyes and hand your power over to the algorithm. You create before you consume. You listen before you react. You invest in your mind before you trade your time. Because the most dangerous thing in the world is a distracted mind with big dreams. That mind will sabotage its own potential. Not because it's weak, but because it's unfocused. You've got to become a guardian of your thoughts. Every morning, you ask yourself, is this building me? Is this moving me? Is this helping me show up as the person I've committed to becoming? If the answer is no, you cut it. You don't negotiate with it. You protect your focus like your future depends on it. Because it does. What you put in your brain matters more than most people ever realize. Because eventually your thoughts become your beliefs become your actions, and your actions become your life. And your life doesn't lie. It's a reflection of your standards, your patterns, and your input. So if you want to change the output, you start with the input. You feed your brain, and in doing so, you fuel your fire. Identity is not fixed. It's not stamped into your DNA. It's not something you inherit from the past or carry by default. Identity is a decision. And every single morning, whether you realize it or not, you're choosing who you are. You're either deciding to reinforce the version of you that hesitates, complains, and shrinks, or you're stepping into the version of you that leads, builds, and expands. This is not about wishful thinking or empty affirmations. This is about conscious creation. It's about looking yourself in the mirror and declaring, not hoping, not waiting, declaring who you will be today, and then moving through the world in alignment with that standard. Most people let their past define their identity. They replay old failures, old stories, old habits, and they let that become the ceiling for who they think they are. They say things like, I've never been consistent, or I've always struggled with that, or I'm not that kind of person. They don't realize that every time they say those things, they're reinforcing the identity of someone who's stuck. They're not telling the truth, they're repeating a pattern, and patterns don't change until identity changes. The way you break that loop is simple. You stop living as the echo of your past, and you start leading from the power of your present. You wake up and you ask yourself, who must I be today to create the future I want? Not, what should I do? But who must I become? Because behavior follows identity. If you see yourself as disciplined, you'll act with discipline. If you see yourself as a leader, you'll speak with authority. If you see yourself as a creator, you'll move with intention. The problem is most people try to change their actions without ever changing the story they're telling themselves about who they are. Identity is not something that just emerges. It's something you embody. That means you don't just think about being powerful. You show up and behave powerfully. You make decisions like a leader. You handle conflict like a creator. You prioritize like someone who values their time. Every move you make is casting a vote for the identity you're building. And the more aligned your actions become with that identity, the more your nervous system starts to believe it. That's how real change sticks. Not through willpower, but through alignment. When you decide who you are today, you take back the power that most people hand off to their circumstances. They wake up and say, I'll see how I feel. Or, I hope things go well. They let the external world decide their state. But identity-driven people don't do that. They don't wait for the weather or the news or their inbox to determine how they show up. They decide in advance. They say, this is who I am. This is how I show up. No matter what comes at me today, I am grounded in this standard. And here's the truth most people avoid. Every day that you delay claiming your identity, you drift. You drift into old habits. You drift into distraction. You drift into who you used to be. And drifting doesn't lead to success. It leads to regret. Because deep down, you know you're capable of more. You feel the gap between your potential and your reality. And the only way to close that gap is to step into the version of you who would already be living that reality. And then live like them now. This is not fake it until you make it. This is be it until it's undeniable. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're accessing the part of you that's already powerful, already disciplined, already clear. That version of you exists. But you have to choose to live from that place instead of waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a myth. It's the language of hesitation. Identity doesn't wait for permission. It moves. The decision of who you are today cannot be vague. It cannot be passive. You have to define it clearly. You have to speak it into your mind with force and emotion. Your nervous system responds to clarity and intensity, so you don't whisper your identity. You shout it in your physiology. You stand like it. Breathe like it. Walk like it. You embody it with your voice, your energy, your focus. Because the moment you do, you shift your state. And when your state shifts, your performance follows. Too many people are walking through life with an outdated identity running the show. They're trying to build a future with the software of their past. But that's not how transformation works. You can't create a new result with an old mindset. If you want to lead a new life, you have to lead with a new identity. That means every morning you wake up, you draw a line in the sand. You say, "This is who I was, but this is who I am now." You let go of the labels. You release the guilt. You stop dragging your old story into your new chapter, and you write a new one with action. This identity decision is not a one-time thing. It's a daily ritual. It's a commitment you make to yourself every single morning before the world gets a chance to tell you who to be. You don't check in with your feelings first. You check in with your mission. Because feelings come and go, but identity is your anchor. And when you lead from identity, you don't get swayed by mood swings or distractions. You move with precision. You build momentum. You make decisions that match your vision instead of your circumstances. You are not your fear. You are not your mistakes. You are not the version of you that gave up, that stayed quiet, that played small. You are the version that chose to rise. You are the version that declared, "This is who I am now," and then lived in a way that made it true. Every day you wake up, a battle begins. Not outside you, but inside. Before the world throws its noise, its demands, its distractions at you, there's already a war raging in your mind. That war is between two forces, one that wants growth, progress, purpose, and strength, and another that clings to comfort, doubt, fear, and safety. The most important victory you'll have today won't be in the meetings, on the calls, at the gym, or in the deal. It will be the moment you decide which voice gets control of your thoughts, your energy, your focus, and your future. Most people don't realize how real this war is. They think they're just tired. They think they're just not morning people. They think it's okay to ease into the day because the motivation will eventually show up. But the truth is, they've already lost before they've left the bed. They've already surrendered to that quiet voice of resistance whispering, 5 more minutes. You can start tomorrow. This doesn't really matter. And what they don't see is that every time they listen to that voice, they strengthen it. They feed the part of themselves that keeps them average. And if you feed that voice long enough, it becomes your identity. But the warriors, the leaders, the relentless, the committed, they win that inner war before the sun even rises. They know that the real enemy isn't outside. It's not the competition. It's not the market. It's not the obstacles. The real enemy is internal. It's the voice that says, "Stay safe. Don't risk. Don't stand out." And if you want to dominate your life, your work, your mission, then you've got to dominate that voice. Not once, not occasionally, every single morning. Winning the inner war starts with showing up for yourself before anyone else does. That means you don't check your phone first. You don't look for someone to tell you how to feel. You go inward. You listen. You breathe, you feel the tension, the hesitation, the pull of your lower self, and you override it. You don't wait to feel ready. You generate readiness through action. You get out of bed with force, with intensity, with commitment. Because you know if you can conquer your own mind before the world even begins to move, you've already won the most important battle of the day. The world is reactive, the world is loud. It wants your attention. It wants to pull you off course. And if you wake up without a weapon, without intention, without clarity, without discipline, you will lose yourself in the noise. You'll spend the entire day reacting to problems you didn't create, fulfilling obligations that don't move you, and wondering why you feel so exhausted yet so unfulfilled. That's not because you're lazy. It's because you didn't protect your power in the first moments of the morning. You didn't defend your state. You didn't claim your identity. You let the world in before you locked your foundation down. That's why the morning matters. Not because it's trendy or productive or impressive, but because it's sacred. It's the one time of the day when you still have leverage, when you're not yet buried in obligations, when your mind is still moldable. And if you use that time to fortify your inner world, to win the war inside, you step into the rest of the day with armor, with focus, with strength. And when you're grounded like that, nothing outside you can shake you. But that takes a ritual. It takes a pattern that you don't negotiate with. You wake up and you move your body. Not because it's convenient, but because it reminds your mind who's in charge. You breathe, not shallow, not distracted, but with depth and presence, because it anchors you. You speak out loud who you are, what you stand for, what you're here to do. Because repetition builds identity, and identity drives behavior. And you do this not for inspiration, but for installation. You are installing the state you need to live in to create the life you're here for. And every time you do that, you weaken the voice of fear. You shrink the influence of hesitation. You remind yourself that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who commands them. That's the shift. That's the real victory. Because once you control the battlefield of your own mind, you become unstoppable. It doesn't matter what chaos the day throws at you, because you've already chosen your response. You've already chosen your standard. You've already anchored into who you are, and no one can take that from you. Not stress, not failure, not fear. Winning the inner war is not about perfection. It's about pattern. It's about momentum. You don't win by getting it right once. You win by deciding every morning, today I go to war for my future. I fight for my peace. I protect my purpose. And then you act on it. You do the hard thing first. You confront the uncomfortable thought. You finish what you said you would. And you stop negotiating with the voice that wants to pull you back into mediocrity. The world rewards those who can command themselves. Not just in the good moments, but especially in the uncertain ones. Especially in the dark mornings. Especially when no one is watching, because that's where character is forged. That's where certainty is built. That's where leaders are born, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in the victory, but in the preparation. And preparation begins when you take control of the first battle of the day. There's a version of you that's calm under pressure, focused under fire, unstoppable under stress. That version doesn't show up randomly. That version shows up because you've trained for it. You've built it, you've chosen it. And that choice is made before the world ever even gets out of bed. It's made in silence, in solitude, in commitment. It's made when you refuse to let the voice of limitation speak louder than the voice of power. That's what winning the inner war means, silencing the enemy inside so you can lead everything outside. Success is not some giant leap. It's not some explosive breakthrough. It's not the spotlight, the stage, or the celebration at the finish line. Real, lasting success is built in the quiet hours, in the small, consistent victories that most people overlook. It's not the outcome that defines a champion, it's the process. And the process is made of tiny, seemingly insignificant decisions stacked on top of each other, day after day. The most powerful thing you can do for your momentum, your mindset, and your mission is to stack small wins before the rest of the world even wakes up. When most people think about changing their life, they think in massive shifts. They wait for the big break, the right moment, the perfect motivation. And because they're waiting for something monumental, they ignore the small actions that are right in front of them, the ones they could take right now. They don't realize that those small actions, repeated with intention, are what create unstoppable momentum. It's not about the intensity of one big effort. It's about the consistency of stacking win after win, no matter how small. When you wake up in the morning and immediately take action, you signal to your mind and body that you are in control. You're not drifting. You're not waiting. You're not reacting. You're creating. That first action doesn't need to be massive. It just needs to be deliberate. It could be getting out of bed the second your alarm goes off. That's a win. It could be making your bed, another win. Moving your body, taking a cold shower, journaling your thoughts, reviewing your goals, speaking out your identity. These are all small wins, and they compound. Each one adds another layer of certainty, another dose of energy, another degree of alignment between who you say you are and how you actually live. The reason small wins matter so much is because they build evidence. Every time you follow through, even on something tiny, you collect proof that you are who you say you are. That creates self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of personal power. Most people don't lack ability, they lack trust in themselves. They've broken so many promises to themselves, skipped so many little things, that they no longer believe in their own follow-through. But when you stack small wins, you rebuild that trust, one action at a time. And when you start believing in your own ability to follow through, everything changes. Your goals become inevitable instead of impossible. Stacking small wins also shifts your emotional state. When you begin the day with action instead of reaction, you move into momentum, and momentum changes your entire physiology. You breathe deeper, you think clearer, you speak with more conviction, you walk with more purpose. You don't feel like you're dragging yourself through the day. You feel like you're leading it. And that shift doesn't require a 90-minute workout or a 10-page journal entry. It just requires movement, intention, a refusal to let the morning go to waste. There's something deeply psychological about the early hours. When the world is quiet and still, and you're the only one moving, you tap into a deeper sense of power. You're not just getting things done, you're doing them when no one else is. That creates pride. That builds discipline. That sets you apart from the masses who are still asleep, snoozing alarms, and telling themselves they'll start tomorrow. And when you stack wins in that space, before the noise, before the emails, before the obligations, you create space for mastery. You give yourself a margin for growth that most people never access. It's easy to underestimate small wins. They're not flashy, they don't go viral, they don't get applause. But what they do is compound. Just like saving small amounts of money leads to wealth, saving small moments of focus leads to power. The person who stacks 10 small wins before 7 a.m. is not the same person who starts the day in chaos, anxiety, and disorganization. Their minds are different. Their standards are different. Their trajectory is different. You've got to rewire the way you see progress. Don't wait for the big break. Don't chase motivation. Build systems. Build rituals. Build evidence. Ask yourself, what's the first win I can get today? Then go get it. Then get another, and another. Stack them. Layer them. Compound them. Each one is a vote for the person you're becoming. And the more votes you cast, the stronger your identity becomes. Until you're no longer trying to become something, you're simply being it. Even biologically, this works in your favor. Every time you complete a task, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. Not the cheap dopamine from scrolling or snacking, but the real kind that comes from achievement. That chemical signal reinforces the behavior. It tells your brain, do more of this. So by stacking small wins, you're literally rewiring your mind to crave productivity, crave action, crave growth. Over time, what once felt like effort becomes instinct. You stop fighting for discipline, because discipline has become your default. Stacking small wins also protects you from overwhelm. When the day gets chaotic, when stress hits, when the unexpected happens, you've already got wins on the board. You've already proved to yourself that you're moving forward. That creates resilience. It gives you a foundation to stand on when everything else feels shaky. You're not scrambling to get back on track. You never left it. Every small win is a declaration that you will not live on autopilot, that you will not be owned by your phone, your schedule, your past, or your fear. It says, I am in charge. I create momentum. I shape my day. And when you say that enough times with action behind it, the world starts to respond differently to you. You start showing up differently. People feel your energy. They see your consistency. They trust your leadership. Because you've earned it. Not with one big leap, but with 1,000 tiny steps, taken while the world was still sleeping. The life you want, the future you see in your mind, the standard you know deep down you were born to live. It doesn't arrive through luck, timing, or chance. It's forged in discipline. It's created in moments when no one's watching. It's built before the world opens its eyes. You must decide who you are before the world tries to tell you. You must act from your mission, not your mood. You must win the war within before you take a single step outside. Every morning is not just a fresh start. It's a test of whether you will lead or follow, rise or retreat, live intentionally or exist by default. This is not about motivation, it's about identity. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. Stack the wins. Control your state. Move with power. Lead with clarity. Refuse to surrender your day to hesitation, distraction, or delay. You must do this before 10 a.m., not because of a rule, but because it's the window where your edge is carved, where your certainty is trained, where your life is claimed. Decide. Move. Execute. Own your morning and you take ownership of everything that follows.